الصوت واضح؟ واضح. شكرا جزيلا، تعبنا خير. ايوه يا شباب. الحقيقة أنا شفت الإعلان ده موجود في الكلية النهاردة. فبداية من يوم السبت وأنا مش عارف الحقيقة الدكتورة سميحة اتفقت معاكم على أساس إن في امتحان شفوي ولا تحريري في المايكرو تيتشنج. لكن هو على مدى أسبوع كامل من السبت 13 إلى الخميس 19 تقريبا، حاجة زي كده. فيعني يا ريت نراجع الكلية ونتأكد من المعلومات ديت، بس حبيت أفكركم في البداية. مش عارف الحقيقة برضه يعني في ترتيب معين كده هنشوفه، ممكن تقروا إعلان عنه في الكلية بخصوص طرق التدريس إن شاء الله. كنا اتكلمنا عن teaching vocabulary المرة اللي فاتت. قلنا teaching vocabulary is very important especially for Egyptian students. قلنا الأسباب إيه؟ الأسباب الأساسية زي ما قلنا English is completely different from Arabic in terms of its orthographic form, its spelling, the spelling of the words. وشفنا أمثلة for some words which are written in one way, but they are pronounced in 2 different or 3 different ways. And some words are written in one way, but they are pronounced in 2 different ways. And some letters in some words are written, but they are not pronounced. And sequences of letters are written in one way, but they are pronounced in different ways. زي ما شفنا الأسبوع الماضي. وبالتالي it's very important the relationship between spelling and pronunciation is very poor in English. This is a problem, and that's why we need to emphasize the teaching of grammar. The teaching of grammar concentrates on three or four different things actually. How the words are pronounced. قلنا الكلام ده من خلال ممكن المدرس يتغلب عليه إنه هو he can model the words for his students. He can repeat the words and ask them perhaps to repeat it after him. Right? He can ask them to listen to recorded materials. Either recorded on a traditional tape recorder or any CD on a computer. The second aspect of vocabulary teaching is the form of the word, the spelling of the word. We need to emphasize by writing the words on the board, but before writing them on the board, we need to make sure that they are spelled properly. If we are not sure of any spelling, we must check our words in the dictionaries to make sure that whatever we tell our students, whatever we show our students is correct. The third aspect of vocabulary teaching is meaning. And that's exactly what dictionaries usually do. They give the spelling of the word, they give the way the words are pronounced, they give the meaning of the word, whether it has just one meaning or many different meanings, as we see in the entries in the dictionary. And the last aspect of vocabulary teaching is the usage. How to use and when to use and where to use the vocabulary, the appropriate use of the vocabulary. This is very important again. It's not enough, it's not just enough for us to tell the way the words are pronounced or the way the words are spelled or the way words mean to our students. Much more important than that is to show them how to use the word in an appropriate way. That's right. Yes, Marianne. Marianne on page 138. ننتقل اليوم للteaching vocabulary. After teaching vocabulary to the teaching of grammar. This is on page 138. page 138. There isn't much that can be said about the teaching of grammar actually زي ما هنشوف بعد كده. لكن في بعض المصطلحات المهمة لازم محتاجين نفهمها. What we mean by grammatical competence. When we say that this student is good in English, that means he has some kind of grammatical competence. When we say that the native speaker has grammatical competence in his language, that means he has a knowledge of a finite system of rules. What do we mean by finite system of rules? لو عدينا قواعد اللغة الإنجليزية مش هنلاقيها كتيرة. خلاص؟ وبالتالي هي they are finite in number. The number is rather not too big, but we use this small number of rules in order to generate an unlimited number of sentences. لو مديني مثال مثلا subject, verb, object. This is a grammatical rule. This is the most important grammatical rule in English. Sentences can be formed by using this sequence. There must be a subject, as for example he. There must be a verb. He plays, he reads, he writes, he eats, he studies. And there can be an object or a complement. He studies English. English is the object of the sentence. He reads history. History is the object of the sentence. So we have a subject, a verb, and an object. How many sentences can we form by using this sequence? An unlimited number. So although we have just one rule, but we use this rule in order to generate as many as millions of sentences in English, millions of sentences. So the native speaker has this ability and we must have it as well. We understand the rule, but we must use this rule in order to generate an unlimited number of sentences based on that rule, following that rule. So the grammatical rules are finite in number, but they enable us to create, to generate thousands and thousands of sentences. And this is what we mean by the flexibility of the language, to generate an infinite variety of sentences. شفنا مثال subject, verb, object. لو شفنا مثال آخر subject plus have plus has or has, have or has, plus been plus verb plus ing plus form plus period of time. Can we create sentences using this rule, applying this rule? Can we do that? أشوف حد يكون لي جملة مستخدمة القاعدة اللي قدامي ديت. For example, subject, auxiliary verb have or has, or helping verb, plus been, plus verb, plus ing, plus for, plus period of time. ما لقيتش حد يشاركني. طيب لو قلت مثلا Ali has been studying English for 10 years, for example. ممكن نضيف object كمان هنا في القانون اللي عندي، القاعدة اللي عندي ديت. Ali has been studying English, so there must be an object here, for 10 years. أو ممكن بتطبيق القاعدة I've been living in Cairo for 6 years, that's right. Nermin, yes. I've been living in Cairo. We have a prepositional phrase here, in Cairo, which doesn't exist in the rule. But anyway, the sentence is correct. He has been traveling for 5 days. This is the correct application of the rule we have here. We have been teaching English for 60. We've been learning Shadi of teaching. هل أنت درست إنجليزي فعلا 16 سنة ولا تعلمت؟ أنا أعتقد دي تقصد دي. We have been learning English for 16 years. That's right. It has been playing piano for, I has been, Mariana. He has been, or she has been, but I have been playing piano for 6 years. That's right. That's the way language functions. That's the way we use grammar. We use just one rule in order to create lots and lots of sentences. Perhaps thousands of sentences following that rule. This is the creativity of the language. This is the flexibility of the language. That one rule can be used to generate thousands and thousands of sentences and so on. لو انتقلنا we have different types of grammar. We have what we call descriptive grammar. This is the traditional kind of grammar اللي هو بيوصف القواعد اللي احنا بنحفظها اللي احنا بنتعلم بيها باللغة العربية ما زلنا حتى الآن. Descriptive grammar, just the description of the grammar and the way it works, but we don't pay too much attention to the application of these rules, how to use these rules in order to generate always new sentences. Yes, Mariana, that's okay. We usually make this mistake or these kinds of mistakes when we type. Sorry, that's right. Thank you. So descriptive grammar, this is what was used to, or what the grammar translation was emphasizing. That was what the audiolingual method has been or had been emphasizing in its teaching of grammar. So we have descriptive grammar. We just give description of the way grammar works, of the way the language rules, the language patterns have been formed and used and so on. We have formal grammar, again almost the same as descriptive grammar. This is a traditional way of dealing with grammar. But most importantly, we have what we call functional grammar, to teach grammar communicatively. That's to say, to use the grammar in our teaching, to use the grammar in our speaking, in our communication, rather than teaching the grammatical rules in isolation. To teach grammar for achieving a function, a communicative function of the language. Because language, as we said before, has a social function. It is a means of communication among members of the same language community. If we are to teach any aspect of the language, we must teach it with this purpose in our minds. That's to teach it for the purpose of communication. To teach it in order to help people use it. Use the language for real communication. To use grammar in order to make sure that whatever sentences we create in the language, whatever sentences we produce in the language must be according to the grammatical rules of that language. So two main different types of grammar: descriptive grammar or formal grammar, no difference, and functional grammar. That's to teach grammar for the purpose of helping learners to use this grammar for real communication, for real use of the language and so on. لو مسكنا رجعنا الكتاب يمكن فيه تفاصيل أكثر. So in the first case, meaning is not the most important aspect of grammar. In the second case, the functional grammar, meaning is basic, is essential for teaching grammar. لو اتكلمنا عن how best to teach grammar, there is no how best actually, but there are different ways of teaching grammar because it all depends on the objective of teaching language. If teaching language is, if the purpose of teaching language is to help learners know about the language, know about the way it functions, about the rules of the language. So we need to teach grammar, the kind of descriptive grammar we've been talking about. The purpose of teaching language is to help learners communicate with the language. We must use the kind of functional grammar that we have been talking about. Teaching grammar depends on the approach to the teaching of language itself. زي ما شفنا in the grammar translation method، الطريقة الأولى اللي اتكلمنا عنها تذكروا. The purpose was to translate from one language into another. So the purpose was not to use the language for communication, but rather to understand the written form of the language and to write it correctly. So descriptive grammar was appropriate for that method. So if we are using the grammar translation method, descriptive grammar, and we'll talk about how it should be taught later, or what we call structural grammar. So we have structural, we have descriptive, we have formal. All of them are almost the same. But functional grammar, if the purpose of teaching the language is to help learners communicate, use the language for real communication, then we need to use what we call functional grammar and functional teaching grammar. So the way we teach grammar depends on our objective of teaching the language, right? بالله الكلام ده on page 140. I don't know whether 140. So the teaching of grammar, the way we teach grammar depends on our objective of teaching the language in general. The second point to talk about actually is the contextualization of grammar. Grammar shouldn't be taught in isolation, as we mentioned in teaching vocabulary. Vocabulary shouldn't be taught out of context, shouldn't be kind of list for the learners to memorize. It should be presented and should be used in sentences in order to make it meaningful for the learners, in order to help them understand the vocabulary, what it means, and how it is used in the language. So it should be contextualized, not the way we teach it, or we used to teach it, or we used to learn it from others out of context. تعودنا نشوف كده قواعد في جداول نحفظها، لكن when it comes to real application of these tools, that's something completely different. بنتكلم عن بعد كده functional teaching grammar for achieving the communicative function of the language. Flexible means to combine both and make use of the best of each of them. الحقيقة the teachers should be flexible actually. زي ما اتكلمنا في طرق التدريس المختلفة. You have a variety of techniques, you have a variety of methods to choose from. So it's up to you, and that was my first request actually for the first assignment. You have a variety of techniques, you have a variety of ideas to choose from according to your own needs and according to what your learners really need in their process of learning the language. Whatever approach you use, teaching grammar should be contextualized. There should be logical sequence of grammar, how to begin teaching grammar and how to develop, how to move forward in teaching grammar. Should we begin with a simplest level of grammatical rules, or should we begin with what's common, what's used more in our process of communication? That's again to say, should we depend on linguistic level of the grammatical rules to choose from, or should we depend on the communicative level? We usually begin teaching the present continuous tense for first year learners of English. Why? Because it's the most common tense usually used by young learners who begin learning the language for the first time, the present continuous tense, because it's more relevant to the here and now, to the life situation. So we either follow a sequence based on level of difficulty, on the linguistic difficulty of the tense, of the grammatical rule, or based on natural order of acquisition. And that's exactly what happens with young children. They usually begin by using the ing form because it's simplest for them to begin with. So why shouldn't we begin with the ing form and the present, so present continuous tense with adult learners of English? So which way to choose, which way to go, it depends on your own situation. لو شفنا الأطفال الصغيرين لما يبدأوا يتكلموا اللغة الإنجليزية بتاعتهم، نتكلم عن اللغة الإنجليزية كمثال دلوقتي، لما يجي يستخدم النفي for example the negation، ألاقيه بيقول no go, no eat, no play، وبالتالي he dropped the time indicator yesterday, 2 hours ago, 1 hour ago. He dropped the auxiliary verb did, do, or did, or does, and he just says no eat, no play, no go, no sleep, وهكذا. لما يكبر شوية بلاقيه بيستخدم الauxiliary verb أو helping verb don't go, don't play, don't eat. الاقيه بيستخدم المودلز can swim, can eat, can go, can walk, and so on. بعد كده he drops the subject and the verb agreement. That's to say, daddy go, daddy no go work, for example. وبالتالي there is no subject verb agreement. ماريانا لسه هنتكلم عن deductive and inductive approaches for teaching grammar. Then we have the child at the age of 5, for example, he begins to use correct forms of the language. الكلام ده موجود on page 141. So should we begin with the kind of verbs and the kind of forms that the little children begin using the language with, or should we begin in a different way? It depends on our objective again of teaching the language. There are 2 methods of teaching grammar, inductive and deductive. Deductive, this is we call explicit or direct. That's to take the rules first and to explain them directly to the students, and then later, after that, they begin to apply these rules, to make examples, to produce examples based on these rules. This is a traditional way of teaching grammar. This is a way grammar has been taught in the grammar translation method and in the audiolingual method, deductively. That's to say again, and that's exactly what happens in teaching grammar rules, for example, or grammar in Arabic, actually, to teach it explicitly, directly, to give the rules and then ask for examples. Inductively, that's to begin with the examples, implicitly or indirectly. Yes. Page 141, yes, Shadi. Inductively, as I said, we begin with the examples, and that's actually what happens with the most textbooks now in the preparatory and secondary schools. They begin by giving examples. بلاقي الunits بلاقي فيها 4 different or 5 different lessons. The last of these lessons presents the grammar that has been taught throughout the other 4 lessons. That means many examples have been provided, and then we come to make conclusions about the rules underlying these examples. Again, the choice depends on the age of the learners. We can't we can't say that one is better than the other, but each of them is appropriate for a specific age level or language level of the learners. Perhaps the inductive way is more appropriate to lower levels, while deductive ways are perhaps more appropriate for advanced levels of language learners. The choice depends on the age of the learners and the complexity of the rules. If the rules are complex, we better introduce them deductively. Yes. ننتقل ضروري 4-stage approach to the teaching of grammar. لو كلمنا عن the steps we need to follow in presenting a grammatical exercise, the first step or the first stage is to make a presentation. Present as many examples as you can if you follow the inductive way of teaching grammar, and then ask the learners to guess the rule underlying these examples, how these examples have been formed, how they are used, and so on. And then you explain the rule with more examples, and then ask the learners to produce examples of their own deductively for advanced. Mariana? Yes. Yes, that's right. For complex rules, for more advanced learners of the language. So practice, to give them more practice, to ask them to produce examples of their own, and then to evaluate their performance and their understanding of the grammatical rules you have presented for them. لو فتحنا on page 144, these are the steps more clearly. Providing examples, this is the way, inductive way of teaching grammar, providing examples that include the target structure. This way, introducing the target structure should start from a realistic context, not from an abstract rule. يعني الحقيقة ما عدناش نشوف الابستراكت رولز القاعدة كده موجودة في الجدول وتتحفظ. Creating focus to draw the attention of the learners to the underlying rules in these examples, to draw their attention, to make them concentrate on the rule you are presenting to them. Then explain the meaning and how this rule or how this pattern is used in communication. Helping them to elicit the rule themselves. What do we mean by elicit? To find out, to discover the rule underlying the examples you have presented for them. Then giving them more examples, that's what we mean by drilling. Giving them more and more examples in order to make sure that everyone in your classroom has understood what you are talking about. Drilling, giving more examples, as I said, in order to help them internalize the structure, internalize the rule, and the way this rule is used for real communication. Helping students to create a link between the new structure and other similar structures. Perhaps you have presented the past simple tense before, now you are presenting the present perfect. We try to find some kind of link between the two tenses actually. How to distinguish between them, which one should be used in which context, and so on. So trying to relate what has been taught before to what you are teaching now is very important. It's a kind of consolidating knowledge, consolidating and relating what has been taught before to what you are teaching now. Production or testing to make sure that they have understood the rule well. They are able to produce sentences using the new rule or the new pattern in these sentences. This is very important in teaching grammar. In communicative language teaching, the following steps can be followed. Providing examples, again the same steps. Giving examples, creating focus, drawing the attention of the learners to the points, the grammatical points you are presenting, drawing their attention to the rule you are talking about, and making them expect to use this rule to produce new sentences, similar sentences, explaining meaning and use or usage of the grammatical rule, and so on. Eliciting the rule by the learners themselves. نخلي بالنا الحاجة اللي الأولاد بيتوصلوا ليها بتبقى أكثر تأثيرا بالنسبة لهم، يفتكروها كويس، ما بينسوهاش، بيهتموا بيها جدا، غير ان انا اديله الكلام من عندي، اديله قاعدة من عندي هيسمعها لكن في فترة محدودة جدا هينسى القاعدة وينسى تطبيقات القاعدة. Drilling the structure, again to consolidate the knowledge you have presented, you have explained by using many types of drills. We have different drills. We have mechanical drills, just sentences, and you ask them to repeat the sentences after you. But we have also substitution drills. أشيل فعل وعايز منهم يحطوا فعل آخر بس يستخدم نفس الزمن في الجملة. دي بسميها substitution drills. في meaningful drills and يستخدموا القاعدة ديت. So we have 3 types of drills that can be used in drilling the structure. No, drilling you are teaching. Quiz, making quiz or giving quiz you are testing. So 2 different activities actually. The idea of giving drills is to give more practice for the learners, not to test them. You are suggesting the drills, you are giving the examples, you are asking them just to repeat the examples. For mechanical drills, for substitution drills احنا بنكتب الجملة ونديهم اختيارات، كلمات اختيارات مثلا، أو نطلب منهم هم يزودوا أفعال بديلة بس يستخدم نفس التنس اللي أنا بتكلم عنه. Meaningful drills to use the sentences or the patterns for communication, a real communication. Should encourage reading and writing and teaching grammar. Practice the rule, that's right. 4 language skills are integrated actually. We can't isolate one skill from the others. And we can't isolate grammar and vocabulary from the teaching of reading or writing or speaking or listening. The 4 language skills, all aspects of the language are integrated. Vocabulary, grammar, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. They are integrated. And the isolation of each of them, of these, is rather artificial to make it easy for us to teach rather than real. يعني أنا بتكلم اللغة بستخدم كل المهارات دي، بستخدم vocabulary، بستخدم grammar، بستخدم speaking، في واحد بيسمعني ويرد عليا وأرد عليه، بستخدم listening، speaking، ممكن أسجل الكلام ده أو حد يسجله ليا، بستخدم writing وهكذا. وبالتالي اللغة بدأت شفوية بحتة، كانت بتستخدم، مش كده ولا لا؟ ما كانش في كتابة، دخلت الكتابة بعد كده عشان نسجل الوقائع والحاجات دي. في كتابة يبقى لازم يكون في قراءة. بالتالي this classification or this isolation of the different language skills is rather artificial. Drilling the structure by using many types of drills to internalize the rule, to understand the rule well, to keep it in mind, to make sure that you understand it and you use it in your own language. Helping students to create a link between this structure and similar structures they know of, that has been presented before, helping them to practice and use a new structure under the control and guidance of the teacher. يعني بيستخدموا الجمل يقولوا جمل من عندهم but under the guidance of the teacher, with the help of the teacher. Memorization. الحقيقة memorization is sometimes important, but not all. I mean, it's not enough. To memorize something, that doesn't mean you are able to use it. You may be able to remember it, but it doesn't guarantee that you will be able to use it properly. Helping students to produce other meaningful sentences based on the new pattern, and so on. Technology and the teaching of grammar. يعني مفهوم الكلام ده كلنا معانا الكتاب. في حد عنده استفسارات في الكلام ده؟ في أي تعليقات اسمعها وأشوفها؟ I'm still waiting. مش عارف مشيت أنا كتير ما كنتش من الأسبوع القادم. فترة الامتحانات؟ بمعنى؟ للأمر؟ لا بتكلم عن الفيديو. يوم 13 السبت القادم في الماكرو تيتشنج تيجي أسئلة قواعد في الامتحان مريان بس. أنا مش عارفين نذاكر إزاي. هجاوب على كل الأسئلة ديت بس أسمع بقية التعليقات بتاعتكم. يعني تقصد إن دي نهاية المحاضرة اليوم؟ لا مش الأمر، أنا على أنا عامل معاكم يعني الأشياء دي المكتب do not clear to me. Yes. طيب الحقيقة في زميلكم شادي شافهم بيشوفوا الرسائل. مش فاهم الفرق بين inductive and deductive. أنا قلت inductive. Deductive, this is a traditional way of teaching grammar where we used to start by presenting the rule underlying the grammatical pattern we are presenting. So we give the rule first, and then we try to create examples based on that rule. This is deductive. واضح يا شادي؟ Inductive, on the other hand, no. We begin with the examples. We give a lot of examples for the learners, and we try to help them to elicit the rule underlying this example, underlying these examples, right? مرة ثانية نقول deductive was appropriate for the objectives of teaching English in the grammar translation method and the audiolingual method. Meaning is rather not important in teaching grammar. Inductive method, on the other hand, comes next. Actually, we present examples, as many examples as possible, and then we help learners elicit the rule underlying this example. أنا قلت الاثنين صحيح، قلت واحدة traditional وقلت الواحدة ثانية rather more innovative. لكن أنا قلت الاثنين مطلوبين في مراحل مختلفة. It depends on our objective of teaching the language, on the age of the learners, on their linguistic level. deductive perhaps is more appropriate for advanced levels. زي ما كنت في الكلية بتدرسوا القواعد، كتاب قواعد مستقل لحاله كده، وبيدينا القاعدة وبيشرح لي القاعدة وبس، وبيعتمد عليا ان انا اجيب امثلة واطبق القاعدة والكلام ده. لكن في المراحل الاولى محتاج نستخدم more inductive methods actually. محتاج ان انا ادي الطلاب امثلة كثيرة جدا قبل ما اديهم القاعدة وهكذا. اتمنى تكون وضحت الصورة. بالنسبة لمريم كانت بتسأل عن ايه الامتحان الامتحان الحقيقة هيبقى زي ما قلت لكم objective test، مجموعة جمل، اما multiple choice questions، سؤال وعليه 3 اجابات نختار واحدة منهم، او 4 اجابات نختار واحدة منهم، او تكملة او صح وخطأ بهذا الشكل. خلاص. الحقيقة يعني اللي بيتابع معايا المحاضرات وفهم الكلام اللي اتقال هيعرف يجاوب على الامتحان كويس جدا، بس محتاجين نقرا المذكرة ايضا، لان في اشياء اضافية ما كانتش موجودة في المحاضرات محتاجين نفهمها ايضا لمصلحتنا احنا نفسنا. خلاص. حد يعرف مع الامتحان، انا كتبت في البداية الاسبوع القادم يوم السبت 13 تبدأ امتحانات المايكرو تيتشنج. انا شايف الكلية اعلان النهارده يا دوب، لسه ما عنديش تفاصيل كاملة، لكن انا شايف يوم السبت حسب ما تتفق معاك الدكتورة سميحة. هذا امتحان شفوي ولا تحريري، هيبقى مقابلة ولا ايه بالظبط؟ مش عارف. الكتاب صعب يا مريم؟ مش صعب ولا حاجة، يا ريت نقراه. يعني إذا كنت بتقولي كده كتاب صعب، امال الباقيين يقولوا إيه؟ إحنا نلتقي، يمكن تكونوا مشغولين الأسبوع القادم حسب ظروف الامتحانات دي، لكن بالتأكيد هنلتقي مرة أخرى على الأقل عشان أقول لكم بالظبط إيه اللي نركز عليه واللي نهتم بيه. في حد قال إن الدكتورة قالت يوم 21. I'm not too sure actually. You have to check with your doctor, Dr. Samiha, and you have to check the notice board in the department actually. أنا ما كنتش تخصص إنجليزي مريم، مفيش مشكلة يا مريم. شيرين كتاب طباعته وحشة جدا، يعني الوقت افتكرت يا شيرين لسه بدأت تبص في الكتاب دلوقتي. anyway الحقيقة ندخل في كلام خارج الموضوع. لا أنا حددت يا شادي حاجتين ومطلوبين في أول يوم امتحانات نهاية الفصل إن شاء الله. في نهاية الفصل نحدد مكان يتم تسليم الأسايمنتس ديت إن شاء الله. يا مي ما تخافيش ولا حاجة، مش هتسقط إن شاء الله. دي المادة الوحيدة الحقيقة اللي في تخصصكم، يعني أنا أعتقد دي المفروض تبذلوا فيها قصارى جهدكم. أنتوا هتخرجوا طلبوا إنكم تعينوا مدرسين لغة إنجليزية بعد كده. دي المادة الوحيدة اللي بتدرس باللغة الإنجليزية، فما ينفعش نقول إنها مش هينفع مش هننجح فيها. ممكن نكتب في الجدول ميعاد الامتحان. أنا قلت أنا دي معلومة شفتها اليوم، يعني تأكدوا منها أنتم بنفسكم أفضل. ممكن تنزل لكم على الجروب كمان، أستاذ محمد تنزلها لهم على تتأكد المعلومة اللي في الكلية وتنزلها لهم على الجروب بتاعتهم. بتاع حضرتك وكمان معاه التسليم. يعني لو تكليف، لو بعضكم عم محتفظ بالرسالة اللي أنا كتبتها قبل كده، ما ينفعش تسلم الأيام ديت. لا يا أسماء، الحقيقة لو فتحتها من دلوقتي هلاقي كل يوم واحد واثنين وثلاثة جايين لي، هتبقى مزعجة. لا أنا قلت اليوم الأول من الاختبارات النهائية إن شاء الله بعد أو في خلال أجازة نصف العام. لكن ما ينفعش إن أنا أقول من دلوقتي ولاقي كل يوم في ناس جاية تدور عليا في الكلية. مش عارف يا مؤمن أنت بتكتب عربي ولا إنجليزي ولا إيه بالظبط؟ ولا إيه الرموز اللي أنت كاتبها دي؟ anyway. في ناس مسافرة. طب ما هو كل الناس بتسافر يا أسماء، كل الناس بتسافر، بس على الأقل يجوا الكلية يعرفوا المطلوب إيه بعدين يسافروا. تمام. تكبير الخطأ. أنا عايز إيه؟ هذا الخط. ما كاتبينها بس مش عارف. ده كان قبل ما كتبت. طب ده يتكبر ازاي؟ هو كده بس الأول. يعني حضرتك اكتب الجملة. أكتب مرة تانية؟ لا مش نفس الكلام أصلي، يعني لو جملة واحدة ممكن نكبر ازاي؟ كل ده مهم. نفسه. طيب زي ما قلت يا ريت نلتزم بالكلام دهوت. بالنسبه لمواعيد التسليم مش عايز حد يجيب لي حاجه دلوقتي. ان شاء الله اول يوم امتحانات هستلم منكم الاساينمنتس. دي الحاجه الثانيه. بالنسبه مريان اعتقد بتقول انها مش لاقيه نسخ من الامتحانات اللي فاتت. ممكن ابقى انزل لكم على الجروب الحقيقه نسخ من الامتحانات اللي موجوده عندي ان شاء الله. انزلها لكم على الجروب. مع شهر فبراير ما اعرفش الحقيقه مريم امتى تبدا الامتحانات. هيتحدد موعدها ونعرف اول يوم. انا ما كتبتش تاريخ. انت لسه ما تسمعنيش يا مؤمن؟ اي تعليقات اخرى يا شباب؟ اعتقد ما فيش حاجه. شوف حاجة عندك مش عرفتها المرة الماضية ولا أول حاجة والله يا ريت نسكت منها مش كتبنا بالتالي نتيجة من المسكين تسخ على الكمبيوتر تسخ على أنا عندي خبرة وغرشن حضرتك في المثال الفيديو الثاني أو الفيديو أنا ثلاث مرات يوم لازم يتواصل أنا عايز أو بالنسبة لدول أشتغل حاجة ولا لو في حاجة خلاص أنا مواعيد دي آخر محاضرة بالنسبة لما كنتش بشتري تمام يبقى تدريس مفتوح بس أنا في عندي أشتغل لو بالنسبة للجروب أنا في الجامعة مع حضرتك بس ما عنديش أي شغل تاني فيه يعني ما يفتش إن أنا في أنت مش عارف لا خالص لا بس أنا مكتوب اسمي في الامتحان في الاستقرار من اليوم إن شاء الله المادة دي أنا بعمل أشكال اللي يمكن عشان أعمل السنة أنت ما جيتش ليه عشان تاخد المحاضرة لا احنا بس نشوف الباشمهندس الأول يبعت حضرتك الحاجة اللي عندك الجيش الأولاني دي المحاضرات بالكامل المحاضرات بالكامل وده جزء الفيديوز عنه هي فيها مجموعة محاضرات يعني لا يا بنات أنا كنت اختار الباشمهندس الحاجات اللي حضرتك اشتغلتها محاضرات مع الناس في الفيديو فيها حتى الموديل اللي قلنا عليه دي الفيديوهات اللي حضرتك انا جايبها لك لو استخدمت الانستكشن ده حاجه فيديوهات عنها ده شرح وده الرسم بالكامل متصور وكده دي اللينكات اللي شوف بس المهندسه خلاص يبقى الفولدر بالكامل دلوقتي لا انا ما اذكر لينكد يعني الضغط نفسه على اليوتيوب ممكن ينزل هنا على الموبايل انت لازم تاخد الرابط نفسه زي ما هو مكتوب وتمسكيه على طول اتفضل يا دكتور انا فوتت أنا عايز أطلع من القرية يعني من الأول
What you see me doing in this tape is modeling effective teaching. It's imperative that I do that because I'm teaching a class on how to teach effectively. And too often across the country, one of the complaints of people who are taking classes on how to teach effectively is they see the teacher doing something that isn't consistent with what they're saying effective teaching should be. And in my class, I really try hard to model what research says effective teaching looks like. All right, I have a task for you. I want you to work in pairs. You've actually touched on this question before. We've touched on it in many ways.
So I want you to write down. I want you to appropriate ideas. I want you to organize these somewhat. What are all the things that you've got to be thinking about? أنا بس بدي يعني بدي شوي
Learner is thinking. There's nothing that you see happening in this tape that could not be done with a large group. I've done it in larger groups, and I've seen other teachers do it as well. And in many ways, it has even greater advantages in large groups because
there's nothing that you see happening in this tape that just could not be done in a large group. I've done large groups, and I've seen other teachers do as well. And in many ways, it has.
You pull this together. Because I couldn't help when I was out observing the teacher today, watching all the things this teacher was doing very well. And as I was talking with him after the act of teaching, he just said, I know I'm not doing some things well. There's just too many things to think about. All right? So I want you, and the person next to you, to write down, and I want you to not just be a potpourri of ideas. I want you to organize these somewhat. What are all the things that you've got to be thinking about in the act of teaching? And the key is in the act of teaching. In teaching, what you're really trying to do is get students mentally engaged. I mean, that's the key to learning. And what whiteboards do is, when you're asking questions of students, some students answer, some students don't. But what whiteboards can be used for is to get all students engaged, because they need to write something down. They know they're responsible for that. So as a teacher, it's a way to get the learner more engaged. It's also advantageous because I, as a teacher, want to know what the students are thinking. I need to know that so I can find out what misconceptions students have, to take...
Hello, my name is Diane Larson Freeman. I'm a teacher educator at the School for International Training. It's common in language teaching education programs to survey current language teaching methodologies. At SIT, we do this by giving our teacher trainees a direct experience with each method. The purpose of this videotape series is to provide you with a similar, though vicarious experience involving 6 common methods: the audiolingual method, community language learning, the comprehension approach, Suggestipedia, silent way, and the communicative approach. The intermediate level lessons you will observe were taped at the television studios of the USIA in Washington, D.C., and it is through the courtesy of the USIA that this program is being made available to you. The students were all volunteers who were studying English at the time. The instructors are experienced language teachers and teacher educators from SIT, who have each taught students in various parts of the world using the methods they demonstrate for you here. For the sake of coherence, the instructors have designed their lessons around a common theme, namely that of a house. What you will see are somewhat condensed versions of the original lessons. All of the steps of the lessons have been preserved, but some of the participation has been trimmed in the interest of time. The instructors have tried to faithfully depict each method, but of course, each instructor is also putting the principles into practice based upon his or her interpretation and experience. First, I will introduce each method. Next, you will observe the method in practice. Afterwards, I will point out the salient techniques and principles associated with each method. The The lessons are meant only to introduce you to these methods. All of the methods have a richer repertoire of principles and techniques than can be fully portrayed here. If you wish to learn more, you may choose to consult my book, Techniques and Principles in Language Teaching, published by Oxford University Press. As you view the tape, try to remain open to what you see. You may be missing out on something valuable if you reject any of the things you observe in these lessons because you don't see how they could apply to your own situation. For example, there are about 25 students participating in these lessons. Your own classes may be much larger than these. Rather than thinking, this will never work with a large class, think instead,
would you like to have the cleanest house in town? Okay. Would you like to have the cleanest house in town? Good. Okay, you. Just cleanest house in town. Good. Okay. In the beginning now, the woman says, good morning. Everybody, good morning. Good morning. The salesman says, good morning, madam. Would you like to have the cleanest house in town? Okay, good. Now the woman says, yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Like this half of the class. Yes, of course I would. This half. Yes, of course I would. You please. Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Yes, you have to say it with feeling, right? Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Thank you. You say. Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Okay, everybody. Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Salesman says, then, madam, you need the amazing Hoover vacuum cleaner. Vacuum cleaner. Hoover vacuum cleaner. The amazing Hoover vacuum cleaner. Then, madam, you need the amazing Hoover vacuum cleaner.
Ring, 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 ring. Now, the woman. Hello? Hello, madam. Would you like to have the cleanest house in town? Yes, of course I would.